enter in, we start talking about monopolies. And this is the structure. Remember, a monopoly is one supplier. That means there's only one company that supplies the good. And that one company is the industry. They are the entire industry. And there is no difference between the short run and the long run because of these things called barriers to entry. So while there are profits made, and companies would love to come in and steal some of those profits from the monopoly, they can't do it. And so that the reason they can't do it is because there's barriers to entry. Last night we had a speaker here who was from Duke Power, and Duke Power is a monopoly. So her position there was sustainability, which is basically how well they treat the environment, and how they're always looking at the global outcome of whatever process they do. So it's sort of but it's funny because you'll get these Duke Powers of the world, and they'll do these public service announcements, and they'll talk about how you should conserve energy. It doesn't really make sense, right? I mean, wouldn't you think that they'd be out there telling you to use more power so they can make more money? But she actually explained that last night. She said that they get subsidies, government subsidies, when they find ways to conserve. So by them buying old refrigerators, like let's say, or picking up your old refrigerator, they actually would provide that service. And if you get a new refrigerator that's more energy efficient, and when they do things like picking up your old refrigerator, they actually get subsidized somehow from the government when they do public service type things like that. So I thought that was interesting, because I was wondering why they would encourage us to not use as much energy. They also, in case you guys don't know, they give out those little light bulbs. The LED ones, the little ones the ones that look like this. They all call LED. If you call them, they'll send them to you for free. And I've done it under my name, my wife's name, my dog's name, so it's really cool. So I got tons of them in my house, and I've tried. They'll give them to you, and they give you a pretty good sized box, like a case of them. It's worth it, guys. I'm not telling you, and if you have any leftovers, you know what I mean, right? Because as much as they say those things will last forever, they don't. They don't last any more than the regular bulbs. At least I haven't been able to find some that do. But the point is that this company here, these companies here, have these characteristics, and the main characteristic is they're the only one in the market. So they control the market demand curve. The market demand curve, if you just remember, a demand curve is going to be downward sloping like that. And in our case, just kind of plotting the numbers that were up there. The price is 15, the quantity is 2. The price is 14, the quantity is 3. I'm just looking at the numbers over there. 13, and 4, and 14, and 12, and 5. And they just, so if you look at these here, right, these numbers should coincide with any other demand curve where it's just downward sloping, and the demand curve is just going to show the relationship between the price of the good and the quantities that are produced. So nothing new. Okay, now what's new about this, though, or what's different, is the marginal revenue line. The marginal revenue line is the relationship that we talked about last time. It's the relationship between the marginal revenue and the quantity. And you can see, here's the marginal revenue, and here's the price. And the marginal revenue is always lower than the price. And the reason that's true is because, again, we went over it last time, because in order to sell more of the good, they have to lower the price to their existing customers. So they lose money on their existing customer in order to get that additional revenue from a new customer. So you know what, a lot of times you'll see what happens is they don't do that, but to say we have an offer for a new customer only. But if they want to get more revenue, they have to lower their prices. If they have to get, I shouldn't say get more customers, they have to lower the prices. So if you look at the revenue doesn't go up that quick. So here, for instance, if they lower the price from 9 to 8, they don't even get any more revenue. they pick up a customer, but their revenue stays exactly the same, so their marginal revenue is zero. So they have to look, just like every other company, they have to answer the questions of what price should they charge, and what quantity should they produce. So those are the two big questions, right? But in Monopolies' case, they actually have price setting power, so their prices are up to them. They can charge whatever price they want. So again, you'd say, well, should they charge $14 in this case? What do you think? Is that the best price for them to charge? So follow the line all the way across. Okay, so at $14, their marginal revenue is 12, the marginal cost is 8. So when they sell that third unit, right, at $14, their quantity is 3, right, that's the cube. And when they sell that third unit, their marginal revenue is 12, so they bring in $12, their marginal cost is 8, so it costs them $8 to make it, so should they make that exchange? Yes, and where should they go from there? Well, whenever they're making a profit, they always go to the next one. They go, okay, we made money selling the third, so let's try the fourth. And so what happens, so would it be worth it for them to stop at the third? And the answer would be no. And the reason why is because they made money selling the third. So if you can make money selling it, then why not try another one, right? Because you should have an exchange. As long as your marginal revenue, money coming in, is greater than your marginal cost, money going out, then you will continue to sell. So the optimal price for them to maximize their profits is not going to be 14, because at 14, they don't maximize profit. They're making $19 in profit. So they keep going. So what about 13? What happens then? Well, if they lower the price to 13, they sell the fourth unit. When they sell the fourth unit, their revenue is 10. So that's additional money coming in. And it costs them 7. So they're making $3 by selling that unit. So should they do it? Yes. So they keep going, right? Because they're making profit. Marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost, then they're going to continue. So the next thing will be, what about the 12th unit? In 12th unit, not 12th unit. What about if they lower the price to 12? Well, they'll sell their 5th unit. And when they sell that, they bring in $8 and their marginal cost is 7. So should they do it? The answer is yes, because I know it says 1, and you'd be like, well, why would you do it for $1? But maybe this is in millions or billions, and so let's just assume that anything greater than 0 is a good thing. And they're still, their profit's good. So they keep going. And now they say, well, let's lower the price to 6. And when they lower the price to 6, they sell their 6th unit. Now their additional revenue is $6, and their marginal cost is $6. So at this point, their marginal revenue is equal to their marginal cost. So they're not making any additional profit. But that's okay. They can still sell the unit because they're not losing. And most companies are going to get up to this point and then stop. But what if they did go one more? They go, all right, well, maybe this next unit will make some more money. Next unit, their marginal revenue is 4, their marginal cost is 7, so they lost, so they won't make the exchange. So today's class is a lot about whether or not an exchange should be made, right? And at what point should they be made, what point shouldn't they be made? Yeah, Jeff.
You need total cost.
Total cost is given. Right, so yeah, I have to give you that. All right, so I'm not asking you to calculate that. If you get a table, I'll give you these quizzes, and you see on the back of them, again, you could just use them for practice if you don't want them. But you'll see on the back of these quizzes, there's a little table, and the cost has to be given. Okay. Yeah. What other questions? Okay, so I know the numbers are all cool, and you look at those, and you're like, yeah. Show me the graph, please, Pantuosco, right? That's what you're thinking? Yeah, okay. No, but this is what we've done on everything this entire semester. Everything. We started with the numbers. Right? We started with the numbers on the demand curve, and then showed you the graph, and now I just put a demand curve on. Did that with the supply curve, and then, once we have the numbers that support it, we just put the graphs up. And we did it with the cost curves. right? We deal with average cost, marginal cost, we deal with perfect competition, so we always start with the numbers, but then we move on to the graph. And we don't go back to the numbers that often, because the numbers are just there to show you where the graph comes from, and then you can use the graph. The graph tells a better story, an easier picture, okay? So this is our demand curve, and the marginal revenue line, if you're plotted in here, would be something like this. See up here, it's going to be 12 when the price is 14, the marginal revenue is 12. So here it's 12. And then it drops down to like 10, and it kind of goes like this. So what ends up happening, if you were to draw the whole thing out, your marginal revenue line typically would look like this. So you have a demand line and a marginal revenue line in the middle. And whenever you do a linear demand curve, it's supposed to be about halfway. My picture is not drawn too well. So whenever you have a demand curve here, you'd have a marginal revenue line on the inside of it. You also have a marginal cost line that would kind of go like this. And here's your marginal cost. And those are the lines that you need to solve the problems of what price should you charge and what quantity should you produce. Okay, so I'm going to draw the graph over here again, right? Just a little bit less messy. So we have the demand curve. You're always going to have, when you have a monopoly, it's always going to be downward slope of demand curve. Are you good with that? Then there's a marginal revenue line that would about dissect this here, so we try and draw it like that. That's how they're always going to look. And again, the reason that it's lower than the demand curve is because of what we went over last class. When they lower the price to one customer, they have to lower the price to all the customers. So when they lower the price from we had 2 customers paying 15. We had to lower the price to 14 to get a 3rd customer. So yay, we got the 3rd customer, but we lost $1 on this one, and we lost $1 on this one. So that means that we lose $1, but we gained 14. So our marginal revenue was only 12, even though our price was 14. Okay, so we know the marginal revenue is going to be inside. We know that there's going to be some marginal cost curve that swoops in like this. Goes like that. I'll put in the average cost curve in a minute. And this is your price, marginal revenue, marginal cost is all measured here. In quantity here, big Q, little q. So the profit maximizing rule, or to answer the question of where should they produce and what price should they charge to maximize profits, can be found by starting at this one point. You go to the point where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. You go to, you got that down, right? I mean, after, like, you be saying it a bunch of times, hopefully you think about this in your sleep, right? The starting point is going to be, you go to where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. So on this graph, here's my marginal cost line, here's my marginal revenue line. Where they're equal is where they intersect. So that point right there becomes very important. But it doesn't tell us anything yet. That's the point that we begin at, but we don't know price, but we don't know quantity yet. Okay? So everybody see that point and understand that where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, the profit is maximized. That's why we use that point. Is everybody there so far? Yes or no? Do I need to explain something a little more clearly? Yes. One more time. Okay. One more time. All right. If you follow this chart along, right, we know that the company is going to continue to produce until the point where the marginal revenue equals the marginal cost. Before that, they're still making profit, so they're going to continue to produce, and exchanges will continue to be made. After that point, they're actually losing money, so they're certainly not going to produce there. So they go to the point where the 2 are equal. Well, on a graph, we know the point where the 2 are equal are going to be right here. So if we drew a line down like that, that quantity would be 6, based on our graph here, right? So the quantity would be 6. So everybody see that? All right, so that answers the question of in a Monopoly, what would be the profit maximizing quantity that they produce? The answer would be 6. How do we know that? You go to a marginal revenue equals marginal cost, draw a line down, and that's your quantity. The price is always on the demand curve. Okay, I can't stress this enough because, again, it's an area where a lot of people make mistakes, so let me stop you before you make one. The price is always found on the demand curve. And the demand curve is not here. This is the marginal revenue line. So to get to the demand curve, we have to go up here to the demand curve. And then you hang a left, and then you go over here, and that is your price. And in this example here, that equals 11. Okay? Yes?
I just want to say that I always say the word hang to mean like turn, and people think I'm really weird because of that.
Maybe it's is it like where you're from?
I guess.
Where are you from?
Massachusetts.
No way. See, me too. That's what we do. That's how the food. So if you guys want to be like that. So yeah. So I'm hanging all out here. No, I'm kidding. All right. That's the, so you go up, over, you're good. Okay, and that gives you your price and your quantity. That answers the questions that we said before, are the most important. What price do you charge? What quantity do you produce? How do you know that? You go over marginal revenue, you get marginal cost, go down to get quantity, go up to get price, and you got it. And then, and so is everything okay with this? The only thing that we're missing is the profit. There's a profit box, right? We did the profit box for the competition, so we're going to do a profit box here. In order to do a profit box, I have to have an average cost curve. So I'm going to put one in now. I know it's going to complicate the graph a little bit, but I'm just going to put an average cost. I'll just pick a point like right here to intersect. And I'll just go like that, and that will be my average cost curve. This minimum point of the average cost curve doesn't mean anything in a monopoly. It doesn't, because they don't, that's not where they do anything. It's not like perfect competition where that becomes the long run equilibrium. It doesn't mean anything. What matters is this formula here, P minus AC times Q star equals profit. And actually, had fun when you guys were taking the quiz, just kind of going around and looking at how you would do this and find the profit. And it was pretty cool, just like kind of watching you in action. But what you do whenever you see the profit question, you start at Q star. That would be this point right here, Q star. So you start there, you go up to the average cost curve, right? So I go from Q star to AC, I put a dot there, and I go up to the price, put a dot there, and this becomes this is all the information I need to determine how much profits are. So Q star, up to AC, up to P. Then I draw that line over, and this is the profit box. Okay? And if I had numbers in here, I don't know, let's just assume that this was like 7 or something like that. Let's just say that that's a 7 that happened to be right there. Then you can figure out the profit by just saying 11 minus 7, 11 minus 7 times 6 would equal the profit. Oh, that would be 4 times 6, so that's 24. I know on the over there it says 23, but it's close enough. Okay? This is it. That's it. There's no long. That's the long run. That's the short run. That's the industry. That's the firm. That's the only graph. See, that wasn't so bad, was it? Okay. So what's going to be? You guys got the quiz. Did it go all the way around so far? You make it everywhere. So that you have the quiz, and you can just look at your own paper there and see if you can figure that out. The first page, it has that little sheet there. So do me a favor and just See if you can figure that out. Go to the person next to you and see if you can figure out, answer the questions number 3, number 4, and number 5. And just take a minute and do that. If it's worth it, and if you can't do it, then just raise your hand and maybe I'll go around or somebody who's next to you can help you out, okay? So take a minute to do that, so we're moving on, right? So we're looking at consumer surplus, producer surplus, and vendor loss. These are terms that you will be tested on, and concepts and areas that you'll have to know, not only on this test, but on the final exam. There's going to be a question on the same thing, okay? Because we're going to apply this to all the market structures at the same time. So here's, let me explain what it is. Okay, let's say that we have this demand curve that looks like that, and there's a marginal cost curve that looks like that. So basically, at this point, this is a pretty wide open market, easy graph. It's almost like saying here's your demand, here's your supply. Marginal, your demand curve. Another term for demand, besides being demand, would be a marginal benefit. So when you see a marginal MB, that's the marginal benefit. That's the benefit that somebody would derive if they ended up buying this good. So the marginal cost is kind of synonymous with the supply curve, and the demand is marginal benefit. So instead of saying supply and demand, you can say marginal benefit, marginal cost. It's the same thing. Okay, but it helps because especially when you guys have to take Econ 103, all we really talk about in Econ 103 is marginal benefit, marginal cost. Apply marginal benefit, marginal cost to like everything. From getting married to taxes to it's incredible. So this concept of marginal benefit, marginal cost is something that people do all the time. That you just probably don't realize you do it. Okay, so you walk into a store. Okay, you're at some some big fashion store like TJ Maxx. Okay, and you walk in and it's maybe not that high. Right, that's pretty far up there. But if you go, you say you're at TJ Maxx and you're flipping through clothes. Anybody ever do that? Okay, so you're looking, there's a huge rack of clothing, and you're flipping through, and you're flipping through, and you're flipping through it, right? And you just kind of go, you're moving along this, and I know I'm speaking to some people out there, right, who've done this before, and then something sort of sparks in you. You go, okay, maybe you don't go, all right, but you go, all right, that might be interesting to me. So you immediately, what happens is you look at that item, and there's this little register that goes off in your head, and you think to yourself, I would be willing to pay this much for it, right? Because you do, the first thing you do is you go, oh, that's nice. And there's a lot of things that you go by, and you say, I don't care if it's free, I won't take it, I won't take it, I won't take it. And then you come up with something that's really nice. And you look, and you flip through it, and you say to yourself, I would be willing to pay, let's just say $25 for that. That would be your marginal benefit. So if I'm looking at that one shirt, or whatever it would be, and I say, okay, I'd be willing to pay $25 for it. Now, at the other end of this exchange is this company who gets all these goods in huge boxes, and they buy them that are overstocked, and they buy them they buy things that are that other stores can't sell, and they buy things that have little defects on them, and so they know how much it costs to get that product out to you. And I happened to visit the Ross Super Center thing in Fort Mill one time, and it is unbelievable. There are like miles and miles of like those conveyor belts in that store. It is an absolutely amazing place to go see, and I think they do tours, and it's not boring. Okay, I mean I wouldn't set you on a tour that's boring, but it's amazing. And when we were there, they happened to get they got a big shipment in of these Adidas warm-up suits that they couldn't sell at the University of Texas games. So they're brown, whatever, the Texas, University of Texas color. And I asked, like, how much do you get these for? And they're like, we got this huge shipment and we paid like $15 each for these warm-ups. And then I was like, okay, so how much will you charge for those? And they're like 65, 60 or something like that. Right? But that's what they do, right? That's how they make their money. And they take a chance though, because I mean, how many people outside of Texas might want to buy one of those things? So they bought a bunch of them, $15, and that's how it worked. But let's say in our case, this is a shirt, and they bought these shirts for like $5. And so that would be their marginal cost. So my question to you guys is, if your benefit, you're looking at this thing, and you say, I'd be willing to pay $25 for it, and they're looking at it like, we only paid $5, should there be an exchange made? Yeah, because the benefit, the marginal benefit is greater than the marginal cost. So there should always be an exchange made as long as the marginal benefit, the price somebody's willing to pay, is greater than the marginal cost, which is the cost of getting that good to you. And so then you look at the item, and they priced it at, let's just say, $12. What will happen?
You're not sold.
Yeah, well, what will happen with you? Will you buy it? Yeah, right? You're looking, you're flipping through, and you go, okay, I like that. And you think, if this thing was $25 or less, I'm buying it. And you look and you see a price of $12. You're going to buy it. Well, first you try it on, right? But then you go buy it. And so that means, in this case, you would have been willing to pay $25, but you're only paying $12. So the difference, so your demand minus your price is called the consumer surplus. So in this case, your demand, which is your marginal benefit, was 25, and the price was 12. So the consumer surplus in this case is going to be $13. That just means that you're basically going to be winning on this. Okay? You would have paid 25, you're only paying 12. Does that ever happen to you? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah. There's some things that when you look at it, you go, pretty much everything I buy, I'm in this range. Okay? Because I'm just, I don't do a very good job of going above that. If I don't want it that bad, I'll just walk away. Right? And sometimes it's hard to, but that's what I do. Okay, so that's probably something we all do, right? You just go, I'm just not gonna do that. And then sometimes you ever buy something and you get home and you regret it. Yeah. So what happens then? What do you do?
Take it back.
Take it back. Right? I have my oldest daughter, that's what she does on everything she buys. It's unbelievable. She'll have something for a week and she'll still feel bad about it. And she'll go back. And it's always something like the wrong size or the wrong color. It's not like she's gonna return it and give me my money back that I paid for, right? But she's gonna go, but she has that, it really comes down to this, she thought her marginal benefit was higher, and it was, but she was really probably down here, where it really wasn't worth that much to her, and then she paid that much, so she regrets it. And in this case, there's also the fact that the producer wins, so the difference between the price and the marginal cost is called producer surplus. And this concept here of producer surplus means that it's not profit, right? You could look at it like profit, but it's not our profit box, because we look at average cost to be profit box to show our profit box. But it's a win, right? So this area right here, in this case, how much would the producer surplus be? $7, right? Price, marginal cost, $7. So this is called your producer surplus from here up, right? And here, this is called your consumer surplus. And that's basically it. Now what happens is the next customer comes in, and the next customer says, I'd be willing to pay $22 for that shirt, and the price is only $12, so I'll buy it, consumer surplus. And the store says, yeah, well, it only cost us $5 to get it out there, so we'll sell it, producer surplus. And then the next customer comes in and says, I'd be willing to pay 19, but but the price is 12, so I'll buy it. And the store says, oh, well, to get this one out there might cost a little bit more now because, so maybe we're up to 6, but we still make money. And then this continues and continues until this point right here. Now what happens beyond this point is now the store is paying more than the person is willing to pay for it. Okay, so that's when you walk in and you look at some item and you just say, it's just not worth it. And that happens a lot too, right? Where you look at something and go, I would have bought this thing if it was $25, but it's $45 and I'm just walking away. I'm not going to spend that much money. So at that point, there are no more exchanges being made. So exchanges are only made up to this point. Okay, so everybody good with that? Yes or no? Okay, so beyond here, there are no more exchanges because the marginal cost is greater than marginal benefit. So there's no need for an exchange. Okay, let's apply this to the monopoly model, because this is the perfect competition model right here. This would be a perfectly competitive industry. And I could also say this equals marginal revenue here. So this is what it would look like in perfect competition. There are exchanges made up to the point where there shouldn't be exchanges made, and it's in a very efficient market. With monopolies, it's not so much like that. So with a monopoly, what happens is we have the demand curve. Looks like that. We have a marginal revenue line that looks like that. And then we have a marginal cost line that looks like that. So here's our marginal revenue. And when I do these, I like to draw the lines kind of like all the way over as far as I can. That's kind of my way of doing it. All right, so here's the issue now. All right, we first have to figure out how much this company is going to charge. And it's a monopoly. So how do we do that, Jack? Where do we begin? Go to what point? MR equals, sorry, I think I wrote M, that's the MC, sorry about that. MR equals MC, right. So that's our starting point. We go up to the demand curve, angle that, and that's our price. Okay, and we go down here. I'm just going to do dotted lines down here, and that would be our optimal quantity. Okay, so now we're going to look at this situation. So this is a little bit different because look at beyond this point here, there are no more exchanges. All right, so what happens here, for instance, if the price was set at 25, just like we did before, and now they set the price at 18. Okay, so because they can set we're looking at sort of a similar situation to this, but they're not going to charge 12 anymore because they don't have to. They're monopolists and they can charge a higher price, and they always do. And in this case, the person was willing to pay 25, does buy it, and they do get some surplus, but they just don't get as much. So their consumer surplus would be how much in this case? The consumer surplus would be the difference between the price, the demand, right, and the price. 7. It's just 25 minus 18. And the producer surplus will go all the way down here, and let's say that's a 5. And how much will the producer surplus be in this case? 13. See, they make all of this area here. Right? And that would make sense because a monopolist is going to charge a higher price. So they're going to steal away some of that surplus that would have gone to the consumer, and they're going to take it in for themselves. So that just makes sense. That's not, I mean, you don't even need an econ course to know that happens. But then there's another exchange, right? And this person who was willing to pay 22 decided to buy it for 18, so that's their consumer surplus. So their consumer surplus will be 4, the difference between 22 and 18. And we'll just say that this area down here is, we'll just say it's still 5. Okay, so there's producer surplus is this area here. Consumer surplus is that area there, and that continues to here for the next person and here, and then all of a sudden it stops. It stops there at 18. So what happened? Well, what happened is these people in here who would have been willing to spend it, let's just say we have somebody here, who would have been willing to buy it for $17. Before, right, if they were willing to spend $17 on it, and it only cost the store it only cost the store like, let's just say 8, then they would make the exchange. In other words, in this area here, the marginal benefit is greater than the marginal cost. So there should be an exchange. In an efficient market, there will be exchange. But here, there's no exchange. Why not? Why isn't there an exchange in that area? You've already read ahead, right? Okay, so the answer is, this area here is known as a deadweight loss. And the reason it's a deadweight loss is because there's no exchange made when there should be an exchange made. The reason that the company doesn't want to make an exchange is because they don't want to lower their price anymore. If they lower their price to you, they have to lower the price to all their customers, so they're not going to be making profit because their costs, their marginal costs, are greater than their marginal revenue. So any point beyond here, their marginal costs are greater than marginal revenue, so they're losing profit. So they don't want to make an exchange to the right of this line. So at this point, all exchanges have stopped. Consumer surplus area is right here. The producer surplus area fills in this gap. And obviously you can't have a surplus down here because this is actual cost of the company. So there is no surplus here. But this area here is called a deadweight loss. And a deadweight loss signifies inefficiency. So when I ask you the question, which I will on pretty much everything for the rest of the semester, is the market efficient? Then if there's a deadweight loss, it's not efficient. So once again, why don't they make that exchange? You tell me why is it that the company says we don't want to make the exchange right here? We're not gonna sell to that person, even though the price is above the marginal cost. Why? They don't want to lower the price then. So can you think of an example of a company lowering their price to some people, but not the people that they already have business with? Cable companies. How do they do that? How do they separate these people here who would have been willing to pay that higher price from these other people in this little area here? How do they do that? Well, but how do they get that? What do they do to get those people in? How do they do that? Yeah, they could switch, or but have you ever seen deals where they basically just said, if you come in, you get this deal, but this doesn't, we won't give this deal to our customers, our existing customers? Cable companies do it. DirecTV does it all the time, right? $19 a month if you sign up now, plus you get the NFL package, and then you call them up and say, hey, I'm a customer. Can I get the NFL package for free too? And they go, oh, what are you thinking? Right? You're our customer. We don't have to do this to you. Right? Apartments do it, right? First come free. Okay? Free applications, no application fee when you do this. That's basically what they're doing, is they're trying to get in those new customers. Right? The airlines have made an absolute living off of doing this. Because you know what would happen is they're going to sell these seats for this price. And then they realize, hey, an empty seat doesn't cost us anything, right? I mean, our cost to fly that additional person is zero, right? A bag of peanuts and a Coke. So that's it, right? Because we're already flying there. So how is that empty seat going to help us? So what do? What do they do to fill those empty seats? Well, they don't lower the price to everybody on the plane, because these people have already paid, so what do? Yeah, they lower the price on those seats. So you can do these super saver things, and at the last minute you can get in on those deals. So my point is that companies understand that there's a dead weight loss area, and they do everything they can to get these extra people in who are on the margin. And once they're in, you know, they just need a little push to get in, and once they're in, then the company still gets to charge these people what they want. So that it's like saying now there's exchanges to here. And when that happens, the dead weight loss shrinks, and the company gets this extra producer surplus and profit. Okay, so you know, as a customer, you kind of want to make it look like, you know, you're one of those customers who needs an incentive to get pushed into this industry, right? To buy this product. Okay, so you call a place up, and like right now, for instance, I'm doing, you know, I'm building a house, and I'm sort of looking around for the people who do this home securities. And it's fun because there's like 5 or 6 different companies, and I just keep playing against each other. You know, it started out at like $59 a month, and now we're down to $29 a month, offering the same exact things. You know, I'm always on the margin. You know, as a consumer, I always want to be here. You know, what can you do for me? Right? Because I don't want to pay with those other people. Okay? I want to pay less than what they people pay. Why? Because you know what? I don't need your product. I don't need this product. You have to have that mentality, and if you do that, then you can get these extra deals. Right? I'm telling you, try it. Call the cable company up and say, I know someone else. Call the cell phone company up and go, I'm thinking about going to, you know, to your company, but I just don't know. And they'll start offering you things. Or go to a timeshare place. Those are the fun ones. Right? Oh my gosh. If you ever go to one of those places, you know, they'll never let you leave. There's always another deal to go. And we went one time, we were on our 5th person. They actually said, you can have a place for free. But basically what they wanted was maintenance costs, right? They wanted maintenance fee. You can have a place for free. Of course, you have to pay a maintenance fee of $200 a month. That's not what the guy, 4 guys ago said. It was like $25,000 for this thing, and now you're saying it's free. But that's what they'll do. They keep, if you're on the margin, you can keep kind of moving down this way. But the companies understand that, and they're trying to extract that dead weight loss out so that they can make profit off of it. Because what does it cost them for the extra seat? What does it cost them to run a cable line to your house? Really? When your neighbor already has one? How much additional? I don't know the answer to that question, but I'm guessing it's not much. What does it cost them for your mobile phone for text messaging? Zero, right? It's zero. It's as close to zero as you can get for text messaging. It's almost free for them. So you want to. So that's what they do, and that's what we have to. I'm you know, both sides of this, right? Have to win in order for there to exchange to be made. Okay, so that's the concept of consumer and producer surplus. So here's what we'll do in real life, right? We'll put this on a graph like that. And this is what you'll get on a test. This is what you'll get on a quiz. This is what you'll get pretty much, you know, this is what you have to know. You go to the demand curve, the marginal revenue curve, like that. You've got the price and the quantity. So you have 6 different questions, actually 8 different questions that I could ask off of this graph, and they're all on, I think they're on the 2nd page. So if you go to the 2nd page, question number 12. It says, use the graph above to answer questions A through G, and what we're doing in this case is we're putting both markets on the same graph. We're doing a perfect competition market, and we're doing a monopoly market. Whenever you see this marginal revenue here, and it's separated from the demand curve, then you can just assume that this is not perfect competition, probably imperfect competition. In our case, it's a monopoly. And if there's a marginal revenue line here, it would be perfect competition. So I don't know if that helps you. If it doesn't, don't worry about it. But question number one, if this was a competitive market, how would we find the price and the quantity? If it was a competitive market, well, you have to assume that we've been doing competitive markets all semester up until today. So how have you always found price and quantity? Well, that would be, that's easier than that. Supply and demand, right? Just go to supply and demand. We assume this is our supply curve, and this is our demand curve, so we go right there. That's how we would just find perfect quantity. That's what we've done all year, right? We just go to the intersection of supply and demand, and we say, all right, this is our perfectly competitive market. And it's efficient because there is no deadweight loss here. So here's our price for a perfect competition. You guys with me on that? Yes or no? All right. And then we go down here, and this is going to be our perfectly competitive output. Okay? Now, just try to block out as many lines as you can. Think, if this was a monopoly market, how would we find the price and the quantity in a monopoly market? Yeah.
For MR and MC intersect and then go up and hit the demand curve and then hang line.
There we go. That would be the price. And down here, I'm putting the quantity. So I like to just do this with numbers because it makes it easier for me to actually, for you to see and for me to grade. Okay, so I'll put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, let's put 11, 12 just to see if you understand all this stuff. So now you have questions on your sheet there, and it says, for instance, question C, what area would represent the consumer surplus if the firm was a monopoly? So if the firm's a monopoly, then that means we have to use the monopoly prices and the monopoly quantities. And if that's the case, right, here's our monopoly price. So you guys can answer that, right? You could ask somebody next to you if you want. They answer it. Okay, you guys get that one? So what would be the area of consumer surplus if it was a monopoly? Okay, number 2, or D, what area would represent the producer surplus if it was a monopoly? Now remember, you can only make a surplus if there's an exchange made. So there are no surpluses beyond the point where there's no exchange made. Okay, so what would be the area of producer surplus in a monopoly model? This is the price. Remember the definitions for a producer surplus. It's the area between the price and the marginal cost curve. And it's that area there. I'm not telling you the answers because I'm going to type this in here. I'm guiding you. Yeah.
I'm confused.
Which one? Producer or consumer? Consumer is just how much would they be willing to pay, which is the demand curve, and how much do they have to pay, which is the price. So you just go over here and you go over the difference between the area, or the difference between the demand curve and the price would be the consumer surplus. Okay. All right, and what area, I'm gonna jump down to G, what area would represent the deadweight loss from monopoly? Yeah, because, so there's this box, right? That's box is important, so. And, all right, real quick, area of consumer surplus for a perfectly competitive market. What do you think that is? You have to go to the price for perfect competition, right here. And the demand curve is already up there, so what areas would represent the consumer surplus? It's consumer surplus is D through P. So it's what somebody is willing to pay versus what they have to pay. Is everybody getting this? The consumer surplus is what somebody would be willing to pay. What somebody's willing to pay is the demand curve. That's the demand curve. What they actually pay is the price. So it's the difference between the demand curve, what they'd be willing to pay, and the price, what they actually do pay. In other words, if you go back to our original example, they're willing to pay 25, they only have to pay 12, so this becomes your consumer surplus. It's basically the same pitch right through here. Okay? So what area would represent the consumer surplus? If this was a perfectly competitive market, then we have to start with a perfectly competitive price. So what area would represent the consumer surplus? Anyone want to guess? Yeah. This is below the price, so they're not winning there. They don't get that money. So it wouldn't be that. 9 and 10, 11 and 12 are nothing. They're just, you don't even need those. They won't beat any of these answers. Because this is their cost. All that's cost. And they don't make that much, so they don't get that. So what's the answer? 1 and 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. All that area will be consumer surplus. Same as here, you guys. Same here. The area between the demand curve and the price, that area there is consumer surplus. That's deadweight loss. There is no deadweight loss for the competition. It's efficient. What would be the producer surplus for this market? For the perfectly competitive market, the producer surplus. 6, 7, 8. And deadweight loss is 0, there is none. Because every time there should be an exchange made, there is an exchange made, so we don't have a deadweight loss. Right? So can you do that on a test next Thursday by yourself? Pressure's on me. Okay, so here's all I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this. I'm going to quickly introduce the natural monopoly to you, and then we'll quit for the day. I just want to do like I did last time when I introduced one topic or one concept. But in natural monopoly, there's a PowerPoint slide show on my webpage on natural monopolies. I made it up like last summer. And it's really good. Okay, it really explains everything you need to know. Quizzes? Yeah, I'll leave like 5 minutes at the end if you want to try to do those quizzes. I'll leave 5 minutes and you don't want to do them. You can turn those in and get them graded. You can keep them and study them and not grade them. I don't care. Okay, I have plenty of quiz grades. So if you want to turn that in, I'll count it, I'll grade it, and I'll leave like 5 minutes at the end to do that. Okay, so if you don't, I'm okay with that too. All right, so here's the deal. A natural monopoly is a monopoly it comes about because it's more efficient for the market to have just one company. You see, let's just assume that when AT&T came in, 75 years ago and put wires up around the streets, and that became your telephone service. Remember that happened? I'm sure I know you don't remember, but you know that's what all those lines were, right? And if there were companies that competed with AT&T, then we would have had 5 more companies or 10 more companies putting lines up everywhere around the area. So you drive down, Cherry Road, there'd be lines, power lines or telephone lines everywhere. Okay, and that didn't happen. It didn't happen for 2 reasons. One, it would be so hard for a company to compete with AT&T because they'd have to put all new lines in. And number 2, it's just not efficient. It's not efficient for the market for there to be 5 different companies. So what they did, what the government did, is they regulated that industry, and they let other companies use AT&T's lines. And AT&T gets a fee for it, right? They get a little bit of a fee, but that's sort of a natural monopoly, where it's best for there to just be one company that runs the show. Okay? Duke Power would be a natural monopoly, and because you don't want a lot of power lines going through an area. The York Natural Gas is a natural monopoly, because you don't want a lot of gas lines, right? One is enough. You have one, and then you make sure that one does, does a good job and is regulated, kind of make sure they're monitored, and that seems to work really well. Okay, so a natural monopoly occurs when there are what are called economies of scale. And economies of scale mean that costs go down when a company gets bigger. Their average cost will decrease when a company gets bigger. In other words, there's a power line already going down the road. You build a house on that road. It's not hard for them to just go off that main one and over to your house. It's pretty cheap. It's a lot cheaper for that to happen than for them to run an entire line out from the power company out to your house by itself. So they use what's existing, and so adding one more, that's what economies of scale mean. When we add one more, the cost doesn't go up that much. When we add one more, the cost doesn't go up that much. So a natural monopoly occurs when there are economies of scale, and economies occur when companies become more efficient when they get bigger. So the bigger they are, the more efficient they are. Okay? And that's all I'll leave you with. Okay, so we'll cover natural monopolies. I would recommend, since we'll be on the test, I recommend looking at the web page in the PowerPoint slides. Did I have you guys sign in or not? No. All right, well, I'll do that because I don't want you to not get credit for being there.